Okay, we'll reconvene the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and we'll turn our attention to the University of Regina and a couple chapters from the auditor that relates to their operations. I would like to welcome all the officials that have joined us here today. I'd like to welcome President Keshen for joining us here. I'd invite him to just briefly introduce the officials that are with him here today, maybe refrain from commenting on the chapters at this point. We'll then kick it over to the auditor, and we'll turn it back your way. But President Keshen, if you can introduce those that are with you.
Thanks so much. So to my right is Neil Paskowicz, who's our Associate Vice President of Facilities Management. And to my left is Dr. Chris Yost, who is our Vice President of Research.
Thank you so much. At this point, I'll table as well PAC 6929, University of Regina, status update dated September 6th, 2022. Thank you to all involved that put together that status update. We're going to deal with these two chapters independently, one at a time, so I'll kick it over to the Provincial Auditor's Office.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, Deputy Chair, committee members and officials. With me is Mr. Trevor St. John, who was the Deputy Provincial Auditor responsible for the audit at the University of Regina. Before Trevor does present the two chapters on the agenda, I do want to just thank the officials at the University of Regina to the cooperation that was extended to us during the course of our audit work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Trevor.
Thank you. Chapter 42 of our 2019 report, Volume 1, reports the results of our third follow-up of the University of Regina's progress towards addressing three outstanding recommendations we initially made in our 2013 audit of its processes to protect its interests, financial, reputational, and ownership, as it fosters research and commercialization of research. Fostering and commercialization of research is one of the core functions of the university. By January 2019, the university had implemented the three remaining recommendations. Faculty deans defined and approved what constitutes specialized resources for each of the university's faculties. The university had processes to consistently use and apply the definitions. Having clearly defined and consistently used definitions of specialized resources decreases the risk that the university does not have enforceable rights to share in the intellectual property created by academic staff and any potential profits from commercialization. The university also had followed its process to review its research institutes. Reviewing its research institutes allows the university to assess whether institutes contribute to the university's strategic research goals and whether researchers' time is appropriately spent on the institute administration. By January 2019, the university had completed reviews on 3 of 18 university-based and faculty-based research institutes. The university had a review schedule for the remaining institutes and planned to complete its reviews by 2021. I'll pause now for the committee's consideration.
Thank you very much. Sorry. One reminder to all around the table, especially, Harrison, he loves karaoke, is just no touching the microphones. Hansard will see you back there, so no need to touch the microphones. What I'll do is I'll turn it over now to President Keshen for a brief response and open it up for questions.
Oh, sorry.
It just goes off system, I guess.
Okay. So I think these are areas that we have, and I'll ask my colleagues to comment in more detail. Our commercialization office that we're establishing will provide far more logical oversight in this area. I think that will make a lot of progress. The research institutes and centers and all that, it's a very interesting. I wasn't part of the discussion at that time, but it's an issue that is very common to universities, as they often create multiple centers and institutes. And I remember at a former institution, we had developed a policy to deal with that very thing, definitions of what constituted different areas. So again, making progress, but for the details, with your indulgence, I'd like to turn it over to our Vice President of Research, particularly on the area of commercialization office, and also to the work that's being done in clarifying what constitutes research institutes and rules governing and expectations with respect to that.
Sure, happy to do so. And we can take any questions, so I'll be brief. We've provided an update. The most recent update would be we have now more research capacity within the commercialization activities. We've hired a new commercialization officer who began September 1st, and this person is drinking from the fire hose. As I've released we have a lot of faculty now that are heavily engaged in knowledge translation. So a lot of our faculty are reaching now a state in their maturity of their research where they've gone from discovery-based, so they've made curiosity-driven research discoveries, and now they're ready to take it to the next level of knowledge translation, which includes commercialization. In the past, I think we weren't doing as good a job of showing our faculty how they can partner with the University of Regina on these pursuits. Rather, they would take it out on their own. And again, as the auditor pointed out, that's a risk. We should be partners with them on these activities, given that we provided critical infrastructure, and that's where the specialized equipment comes. So the new commercialization officer is ready to, really, as I speak, he's in a meeting right now with some of our engineers who have some very exciting applications in ag tech. And so we're excited. I think it is, I've been at the university for 19 years. I was hired in 2003. I'm a microbiologist. And I'm very excited where we are now, as we could see how over the past 19 years we've done that transition now from where we were really young faculty, doing our discovery-based research, and now we have an opportunity to capitalize on the translation part of it. Research centers, reviews are critical to the research centers to make sure they're on point on their visions. And these research centers are ones that are basically used to link across faculties. So these are our type 1 university institutes, we call them, which means they're institutes that function across faculties. So Spheru would be a good example. This is a public health one. It has faculty of social work, faculty of arts, Johnson Shoyama, a number of different faculties work together for common goals, common missions around particular themes. And so we have ones that are strong in public health, in mental health, Clean Energy Technology Research Institute. And so we look to where we at the university can strategically align our resources. So every 5 years, the director has to submit, and it's an external review. We'll bring in people to look and see, are they delivering what they said they would do in their research? And so these are run through 5-year cycles, and it allows us also to see if an institute is winding down. We have a way to wind it down. If I've missed anything, happy to add further detail.
No, thanks so much, and thanks for all the work on this front and for detailing it in the report here as well, being accessible for questions. Looking to committee for members with questions. Mr. Nerlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An opening question, I guess. So in this commercialization process, are you also working with private sector, and what do those relationships look like? Thank you.
So we have a team at the research office that handles we call it an Office of Partnerships and Innovation. And within there is our commercialization activities. So we do a lot of partnership with industry. And some of it, so it depends on the industry partner, what their needs are, and what our faculty's researcher needs are, sometimes, and so this is through contract negotiations. Sometimes the industry will own all the IP, and we're there to really facilitate that company in its launch. Other times, if it's co-created, then we'll engage in a contract, a licensing agreement, some type of form where maybe we take an equity stake in the company, or they license the technology, and ultimately we sell them the patents, let's say, over a period of time. A good example I could use right now, because it's fresh in my head, where we're doing co-creation is actually with a student spin-off company, Celestial Labs they're called, and they won a competition for a Mars lander locking system for basically space exploration. Super keen undergrads, super excited, starting a company now in Saskatchewan on this technology. We're helping them in the patent process, so we're providing the funding, and we're co-creators in that aspect. And so at some time, we may say, okay, they can buy us out if they're successful. We want them to lead, or to launch, really. Our vested stake in IP is really to accelerate Saskatchewan's economy. And so, our role is as a knowledge creator and then to translate that. So yes, we would like to have equity stakes in companies, but we want them to succeed too. So we're very negotiation friendly, I'd say, with our IP, and we actually have a reputation for that now. I've had industry partners say, oh, that was much easier than if we were in the States or other universities across Canada.
Commercialization office will give us greater, I wouldn't call it command and control, but just about consistency. So when we're operating, we're doing so by a set of expectations and rules and clear.
Yeah,
Because that's what I think what the auditors were talking about before, as a young institution. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly as a policy. So invention disclosure, we have better policies, procedures. With a commercialization presence now, faculty to see that, then they'll be coming to us. We won't have a situation where they go off on their own and do things. We've also created, faculty advisory groups. We're getting out there in town halls in this fall to show this new commercialization office, how it's going to work. And so that, yes, that certainly we're consistent. We're consistent across the board on how we treat any faculty that's coming to us with an invention disclosure and how we handle that.
Other questions? Ms. Young?
Thank you. I had a question under section 3.1, where the auditor's report is talking about definitions, and it specifies that faculty deans defined and approved what constitutes specialized resources for each of the university's faculties. Am I right in reading that different faculties will have different definitions of what constitutes specialized resources? And can you help the committee understand that diversity of definition?
It would be, let's say we have a scientist who's studying viruses and developing vaccine candidates. They would likely use, when looking at the virus morphology, they would use an electron microscope. That would be defined by the Faculty of Science, the Dean of Science, as a specialized piece of equipment. If in the course of their invention discovery, they used that electron microscope, that would be deemed then the specialized equipment. It's harder when it's in, say, something like social sciences on what constitutes a specialized piece of equipment, because, a laptop isn't what you might consider specialized, right? So certainly there's going to be, in the engineering and sciences, there's a lot more lists of specialized equipment than there would be in other faculties.
On the review of all the institutes, that review that was planned to be completed by 2021 is complete?
Which institute? There's.
Sorry, it says, yeah, the university's research institutes that.
Complete, we have our process in place. Sorry, our reviews are ongoing. So we have 7 institutes, and then they work in a sort of a cycle where they are in their 5-year review. But yes, the process, we have very standardized processes now. For instance, the AVPR chairs the committee. The resources provided come from the research office. The types of members we select to sit on the committee are all predefined on who sits. The template that the executive director for each research center provides for the review committee is all standardized. So yeah, that's all done and actually has been operational for a couple of rounds now.
Question was going to be about the regularity of that review, and I think I heard you say every 5 years an institute will be reviewed.
With the caveat here that COVID put things in a bit of a delay, so some are out, some may be 6 years into there before they're going to get reviewed.
Awesome. And last question for me, what's the reception from faculty and I don't know if graduate students would be involved in research commercialization as well, but with the new research office and new poor individual who I think you said started September 1, what's the cultural uptake in the institution been with this new role?
Well, I think there's a lot of excitement because they can feel now that they're partnering. There's a partner on their pursuits. Graduate students, glad you brought it up. They fit very heavily into our focus. We have our Dean of FGSR, Faculty of Graduate Studies and Research, Dean Duai, actually is launching a GATE Center, graduate applied training and entrepreneurship. We want our graduate students to be more entrepreneurial, so we are definitely investing our resources in helping them launch knowledge translation. Graduate students are the engine of a research enterprise at a university. Without graduate students, you wouldn't have research. And so we see them as a very important part. And particularly as they're going to go off in careers, one of my personal goals would be to increase the number of startup companies that come out of the university that are launched by graduate students. We're invested in them. Yep.
Super exciting, thanks.
I'm not seeing any further questions right now, and tracking, these recommendations came a few years back, and I've sort of tracked the progress on it and well aware of the dynamic really impressive work going on at the University of Regina. I just want to thank everybody that's here and all the others that will have been involved in this work and seeing implementation on these recommendations. The university's really built a reputation of that research and of that innovation and then of commercialization. And it's wonderful to see the actions around feeling like you've got a structure around intellectual property rights and stuff that will work well for the institution, but importantly for that research and those entities, those businesses moving forward. So thanks for all the work and all the energy you put into this important undertaking. I would, these have been implemented, these recommendations, so I'd simply welcome a motion at this point to conclude consideration of this chapter. Moved by Mr. Harrison, all agreed? That's carried. We'll move along to Chapter 47. No new recommendations there either, but follow up and I'll turn it over.
Thank you. Chapter 47 of our 2019 report, Volume 2, reports the results of our third follow-up of the University of Regina's progress towards addressing the two outstanding recommendations we initially made in our 2013 audit related to its processes to procure goods and services. Effective purchasing processes can help the university make good use of its resources, ensure transparency, fairness, and achievement of best value. By September 2019, the university had implemented the two outstanding recommendations. The University of Regina improved its processes to better coordinate procurement of goods and services across the university. In addition, the university established sufficient contract documentation requirements for purchasing consulting services. The coordination of goods and services procurement across departments helps the university to ensure consistent use of its purchasing policy. The use of sufficient contract documentation requirements helps the university limit its exposure to legal and/or financial risks. I'll pause now for the committee's consideration.
Thanks so much. I'll turn it over to President Keshen if he has a brief remark with respect to this report. Of course, the recommendations have been implemented.
We've made a lot of improvements on procurement. We're doing a lot of exciting work on procurement, and perhaps in that respect, with your indulgence, I'd like to just turn over to Neil to make a couple of comments about some of the, not just the past improvements we made, but future directions in which we are undertaking.
Thanks, Jeff. The two items have been completed for a while now. The first item was around the commitment authorizations, so the university signing contracts with external bodies. And some of the issues were around people signing authority, right? Did they have the authority to engage? And the specific ones were projects that had changes to them that took them past thresholds. So that part, we just increased our rigor with the commitment authorization process, ensuring that proper documentation was attached, and it was routing through all of the right signing authorities for it, and really closed any gap we had. We were fine on any further audits that happened on that piece. The other was on the procurement of consultants, and as you might see in the background with supply management services, they engage and procure consulting resources, as does facility management. And facilities management is around architects, engineering consultants, different sort of business planning studies. So through the evolution, SMS's, supply management services, documentation had advanced a little bit further than ours, and there were a few key points in there that SMS included that FM didn't. So with the audit, we aligned them basically so that any of the points that needed to be updated were basically consistent. So again, further audits that happened to confirm that we were the same were all up to date, and so it indicated that we were fully implemented there. The comment on continuous improvement, absolutely a factor. As we go through procurement, there is sort of continuing outside influences on that, And then we also strive to get increasingly efficient so that we can go as quickly and efficiently as we can, and also effectively deal with it efficiently as we can for our partners in the community, whether that's consulting or engineering and constructors. We do want to be as nimble as we can. The construction is a little bit volatile, even more so these days, and we need to be able to kind of quickly react and not be too sort of cumbersome in our processes. We feel that we got the right balance of protecting the university's interests, but also not being too onerous on some of the timing that happens as we're kind of moving through projects. Yeah, something that we're working on presently is working through how we can advance our Indigenous procurement methodologies here. Lots of discussion on it, watching the industry influences. I think a lot of us are really trying to understand how to do this effectively. And with the Construction Association, we've been at some really good forums and discussions with them. With our peer institutions, we're working through that. A lot of it is setting SMART goals, right? Specific and measurable and aspects where we can really demonstrate the right kind of partnership levels and the right sort of measurements and accountability aspects. So a very strong learning process right now. We're working jointly with U of S and SAS Poly to have something that is more uniform between the institutions, and working to that. At this point, we're looking at specific goals on projects right now, and but trying to get something that's more consistent across all projects and across the institutions. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Report here, and any further any questions from members? I've been around this table long enough to track this from its genesis through to this point as well, and I just want to say thank you so much. I know it hasn't been a small undertaking, but you're doing very important work. Not seeing any further questions at this point, I would welcome a motion to conclude consideration of Chapter 47. Moved by Mr. Nerline. All agreed? That's carried. President Keshen, thanks for, and your officials, thank you so much for your time here today, and all those others that will have connected to the work here today. Go Rams, go Cougars. Welcome back to students and to faculty. We wish them all the best. Any final remark before we kick you out of here?
Just to thank you all very much, and we'll continue to do our best to serve the people of this province. And do they get to keep the ties?
Thank you for the loan of the time. Appreciate this.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.